Hi, this is Xanthe. I just want to talk about colour and comparing colour. The concept of cool and warmer is subjective, but generally you could say that this is a cool yellow, even though you think, oh, yellow is always warm. Well, you could, if you're looking at the yellow here, I've used this yellow here, so it's cooler than, but this one is labelled on the tube primary yellow, and it's actually a mixture, which is hilarious because if it's a primary, so it's actually a mixture of two yellows and white. This one here, just trying to remember what I used pearl red, which is a favourite of mine, which is a single pigment, so I think that's the closest to a primary red, so that's straight out of the tube and then mixed with white. This one is called primary magenta, and it might not look that different really. I'll just show you the difference. So this one is labelled primary magenta and it's PV19, yet this one is also PV19, it's called quinacridone red violet, yet this one here is called quinacridone magenta PR122, but can you see how that one looks quite different from that one and looks quite different from that one? So they're quinacridone family, but you can get different ones which lean more violet. Now, I've used in this case cobalt blue. Now I've got two cobalt blues. I've got one which is a cobalt hue mixture somewhere, and I've also got cobalt blue. It's a new one. Probably need to use another layer here. PB28, so that's the one I used in this painting, and I've also got this cobalt blue. It's actually a convenience mixture, but it has the ultramarine blue in it, PB29, which is there, plus it has the phthalo blue red shade. So we've got you have a red shade or green shade of phthalo blue. So the red shade, I think is approximately here. The blue shade is, the green shade is approximately here. So, they're saying which way they lean. I think it's more useful to think about how they lean. For example, we've got a phthalo green, that's the blue shade, and we've got a phthalo green yellow shade. I've used the yellow shade for this one. So yellow shade is probably about there, and the green shade, blue shade will be leaning towards blue. So different ways of talking about colour, but when you will get different results with what you mix together, with what blues you used or reds you used, or whatever label you want to call these colours. You will get different results when you mix them. But for this one here, I used mainly 6 colours, and then I've added in, just a touch of glazes of a few others. Now, so just showing the order though of the hue, the relative hues. So we've got, yellow, we go through orange, we go through red, we go through, I would call this sort of like a fuchsia or a cool red. We've got magenta, we've got our red violet, we can call that violet, we can call it purple or violet, we can call it indigo. And it doesn't really matter at the end of the day when you're an artist. You just want you want a certain colour. It doesn't really matter what it's called, but this is like ultramarine blue. We'll be going through to more cobalt blue, our phthalo blue. Just stopping at phthalo for a second. Phthalo blue is essential phthalo cyanin blue, which basically in paint pigments is we've got our primary cyan here. I can jumping back and forth like my mind does. It's creative mind. Anyway, primary cyan is actually phthalo blue plus white. So this is actually, the cyan is actually phthalo blue, really. But anyway, we're carrying on with phthalo blue. We've got phthalo turquoise, which is a mixture of phthalo blue and phthalo green. We've got phthalo green, blue shade, phthalo green, yellow shade, and then we mix those together, we get these lines. There's not really anything in my pigments in this range, but you can mix basically just about anything in between high chroma if you go sideways. So if you want a green, you can mix anything from a blue to a yellow or anything in between, but depending on which you use will depend on how vibrant that green is, whether it's a reddish green or a brownish green or an olivey green or whatever, you know, some of these sort of greens, for example. Now, with these I've done tints. I've added white. These greys are actually just a mixture of leftovers, so they just don't extra greys, just mixing these bright colours together, and so these sort of muted colours are actually mixing together as well, muting them down. The more you mix them, the more muted they get, till you end up with a neutral grey in the end. Theoretically, if you didn't have white, you would end up with black, but because we've got white in these mixtures, we get greys instead. Some might be surprising, so let's talk about that. I've also used white around the edge, titanium white, and I've also used the white with a few tints, so just 3 on each, the middle of each white mixtures. The rest are actually glazes. So glazes are like transparent layers, a little bit like stained glass, layered over each other. And then what I did is I just applied like a clear transparent layer with that colour, and then I added a different colour. So each of these triangles, apart from these ones here, have between 1 and 3 layers of paint. And if I, you might think, oh, that one looks sort of like, you know, this kind of, you know, purpley kind of colour, lilac, you want to give it a, you know, whatever name you want to give it. Here's some of these purpley colours, you see there? But when you look close, the camera's not going to focus clearly, you can actually see what it's made up of. In this particular painting it's not as obvious in this one where I've mixed them together directly, but this one here where I've gone and just layered a thin layer of glazing, you can actually see what is making this up. I've used the same pattern, so I've got this hexagon here, then this hexagon here is that phthalo green yellow shade, this one here is the phthalo blue, which they've called primary cyan, basically just a slightly lighter version of phthalo blue. Yeah, so phthalo blue, phthalo cyanine, so there's your cyan in that word. So basically it's based on a copper complex instead of greeny blue if you've done any chemistry. So we've got the cobalt blue here I've chosen. This is this hexagon adjacent is all with that. This one here, which is they've called primary magenta, which is really just a dark red. That's that one there. There's 6. That pearl red, so those 6 there. And that primary yellow, which is the mixture of the 2 yellows plus the white, is that one there. Then what I've done, so I've gone for these ones here, then I've gone to these corners as well. So these are a mixture of 3. Each of these corners are have ended up with more colours, so you can sort of see some of the colours in there. But the actual pattern I used with the glazes, and I went one colour at a time so I didn't get confused, is I used the same pattern. So for example, if we look at this one here, which is the phthalo green, I've used the same pattern here. So this here that looks sort of purpley from a distance, or lilac-y, when you look closely, it's still pigments of this green here, which is the original glaze. Then glaze over the top I used pearl red. When we mix them together we got that kind of purpley colour. To mix them together we got that kind of purpley colour. But if you look really closely in this instance, my camera's going to cooperate or not. If we look closely in this instance, we can actually see the particles of the red and the green. So it's made up of this one and this one here. This one here is made of the green and the labelled magenta, which is pretty much a red. This one here is with the blue, with this cyan or green blue. This that's the green, but glaze, so it's, you know, you've got the white showing through from underneath of this one. Yeah, and then we've got the yellow. So this hexagon here adjacent. So we've got exactly the same sequence of colours, but on top. This one here, these sort of purples, we think, oh, it looks like somewhere in here, but it's just perception. We haven't done a chemical reaction, we've just done a mixture, but because the particles of the this greenish blue here are closely adjacent to these particles here, and these ones here, they kind of look kind of purplish. You see that? And then we've got a layer of yellow over the top, a thin layer. So the glazes are quite thin. You know what to do, the glazes, I've just diluted them with medium and a little bit of water. So just to, you know, clear medium. You can see here that there's not much difference really with using the magenta or the pure red. Now if I had used the other magenta, like this quinacridone magenta, we would have seen more of a significant difference with the colours. But I was just interested in comparing this group of colours. And so then we've got a red one, we've got a yellow one, we've got our green one. But you see how they're all the same pattern? But it can be surprising because, you know, if you're mixing this one and this one, you know, people saying, oh, you're supposed to get a grey if you do opposites. Well, we haven't. We've ended up with, in this case, just going to see which way we are. This is the magenta with a touch of green. You can actually see the green particles. It's doesn't always do this, but it has in this painting. That's what I thought it was interesting to point out. It's what I'm trying to think, granulation, I think they call it, when the watercolour people get that. It's used for different effects. Now, so in this case, we've got the magenta here, and we've got green over the top. I mean, it has muted down the magenta, but I've used glazes. Then I've got the cyan with, you can actually see the particles if you look closely. So these tints at the edge, I've basically used, that's just this with white, and magenta with white versus our red with white. Not much difference between this particular red and this particular magenta. It's basically just another red really here. You can get, if I had used this particular magenta here, which is more violet leaning, I would have got more into these kind of purples. Now this particular hexagon here, I've just you know, used glazes again, but it's gone quite dark. But again, it's the same pattern here. So we have used a bit of, in this case, the magenta and the blue mixed together, and then what I've done is added a layer of each of these. But I've done it all kind of systematically, so I didn't get confused. So, you know, we just work with just the yellow and find all the squares that were just, you know, this is a yellow one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Oh, sorry, this one. So this one, just trying to think about the original pattern. So these are all the yellows, and then we've gone also to the corners, or the vertices, how do you say that word? And then what I've done over the top is I've just used a metallic paint. I've used silver and gold. You might just see it more change the angle a bit, and I've also mixed the silver and gold together in some parts. Anyway, thank you.